Life will test you, storms will come, people will fail you, but in the middle of every breakdown, there is one truth that never changes. God is your refuge and your strength. If you've ever felt like giving up, you need to hear this message until the very last word, because it might be the one thing that changes everything for you. When life feels like it is collapsing around us, when the very ground beneath our feet seems unstable, and everything we thought was certain suddenly shifts, there is a deep human instinct to run toward safety. We look for something solid, something dependable, a place where we can rest without fear of being harmed. For some, that refuge is money, but money disappears. For others, it is people, but people can betray, fail, or simply be unable to carry our burdens. Some lean on success, but success is fragile and fleeting. Yet through every collapse of human strength and every disappointment that comes with leaning too heavily on things of this world, one truth remains unchanged. God is an unshakable refuge. He is the immovable foundation that does not falter, does not erode with time, and does not crumble under pressure. The storms of life may rage with fury, but those who hide in him find safety that the world cannot take away. It is not that troubles vanish when we call him our refuge, but rather that we gain access to a shelter that is stronger than the storm itself, a sanctuary where fear loses its grip and peace reigns in its place. To understand the magnitude of God as our refuge, imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. The winds are howling, lightning cracks through the sky, rain pours with relentless force, and it feels like at any moment the storm will sweep you away. Then, suddenly you find a rock-solid fortress, a strong tower where you can run inside, and no matter how fierce the storm outside becomes, inside you remain secure. That is the image Scripture paints of God as our refuge. He is not a flimsy tent that collapses under heavy rain, not a temporary shield that only works for a short time. He is the everlasting fortress that never weakens. The power of this truth is not found in escaping storms, but in knowing that even while storms rage, you are covered by a protection that no force on earth can overcome. And when your soul grasps that reality, fear loses its power over you, because you know you are never exposed or vulnerable when you are hidden in him. There are countless moments in life when fear tempts us to forget this truth. A diagnosis from the doctor that shakes your body, a phone call in the middle of the night that alters your family forever, the crushing weight of bills you cannot pay, the betrayal of someone you trusted with your whole heart. These are the storms that make us feel exposed and defenseless. But the Word reminds us that God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Notice the words, a very present help. He is not far away, not delayed, not waiting for the storm to pass before he arrives. He is present right there in the trouble, providing a refuge that can hold you steady when everything else is spinning out of control. This is why the people who understand God as their refuge move differently through challenges. They don't deny the storm. They don't pretend the pain is not real, but they walk with an assurance that says, I am covered, I am protected, I am not standing alone. God being our refuge also means that we don't have to keep carrying the illusion that we are self-sufficient. So many people live life believing they have to hold everything together on their own, that they must be strong enough, smart enough, resourceful enough to overcome every difficulty. And when the weight of life inevitably becomes too heavy, they break down because they were never designed to carry the full load by themselves. God as our refuge is an invitation to stop striving in human effort and start resting in divine protection. It is a reminder that even in our weakness, his strength is sufficient, and even when our plans fail, his covering remains. This refuge is not earned. It is not something we build ourselves. It is given freely to anyone who seeks him. When we make God our refuge, we also experience a shift in perspective. Refuge is not only about protection from what is outside, it is about transformation on the inside. Fear begins to dissolve, worry starts to lose its grip, and confidence rises, not because circumstances have changed, but because we recognize who holds us within his care. Refuge is the assurance that you are not defined by what threatens you, but by the one who covers you. This is why people who dwell in God's refuge radiate peace even when surrounded by chaos. They have tapped into a security that no earthly trouble can steal, and their lives testify to the truth that there is a fortress available to every soul who dares to trust. Think of the countless figures throughout history who leaned on God as their refuge. David, hunted by enemies who wanted his life, declared over and over again that the Lord was his fortress and stronghold. He didn't just say it when life was comfortable. He proclaimed it in the wilderness, while hiding in caves, while facing danger at every turn. His confidence was not in his weapons or his army, but in the God who shielded him. That same refuge is available today. It is not reserved for kings or prophets, not reserved for the perfect or the powerful. It is for the broken, the weary, the fearful, the overlooked. God does not ask whether you are strong enough to enter his refuge. He simply asks that you come. What makes God's refuge unshakable is that it is built on his eternal nature. Everything human-made can crumble. Everything worldly can pass away. But God's character, his love, his promises remain unchanged. When he says he will cover you, he means forever. When he says he will be your shelter, he means no enemy, no storm, no trial can strip away his protection. To take shelter in him is to place yourself in the only refuge that time cannot erode and circumstances cannot destroy. That is why choosing him as your refuge is the most powerful decision you will ever make. Because once you are in his covering, you can face the world with courage, knowing that nothing has the power to pull you from his hands. There comes a point in every person's life when human strength reaches its limit. No matter how determined, disciplined, or resilient you are, there are moments when your body feels weak, when your mind feels exhausted, and when your spirit feels like it has nothing left to give. In those moments, many people collapse under the weight of life, not because they are lazy or unmotivated, but because human strength was never designed to carry the full load of existence. The truth is, your strength is temporary. It runs out, it gets drained, and it falters when pushed beyond the breaking point. Yet there exists a source of power that never depletes, a reservoir of energy that never dries up, and a force that can take over when yours has been completely spent. That source is God's strength, and it is far beyond anything you could ever produce on your own. The greatest freedom you can experience in life is realizing that you were never meant to do it all in your own strength, because divine strength will carry you further than your own power ever could. Think about how exhausting it is when you try to handle everything by yourself. You wake up with the pressure of responsibilities. You fight battles in your mind. You wrestle with fears about the future. You grind day after day trying to make ends meet. And sometimes it feels like no matter how much effort you put in, you are still falling short. It is like carrying a weight that gets heavier with every step you take until your legs tremble, your back aches, and your hands slip. That is what life feels like when you rely only on your own strength. But when you turn to God and draw on his power, something supernatural happens. You find yourself standing when you should have fallen. You find yourself moving forward when your body screamed to quit. You discover a strength that isn't tied to your muscles, your bank account, or your abilities. It flows from a source so much higher and greater than you. It is in those moments you realize that your limitations are not the end of your journey. They are simply the doorway to experiencing God's unlimited power. The reason many people feel constantly worn out is because they confuse activity with strength. They keep moving, they keep doing, they keep striving, and they assume that if they are busy enough, they must be strong. But true strength is not found in constant motion. It is found in sustained endurance that only God can give. Human strength can push you for a season, but God's strength sustains you for a lifetime. It is not about sprinting fast and burning out. It is about being able to walk through valleys, climb mountains, and endure storms without breaking down completely. This kind of strength is supernatural because it renews itself day by day. Scripture says, Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That is not motivational fluff. It is a promise that when you lean into God, your strength is constantly renewed, even when your natural energy should have been depleted long ago. Strength beyond your own also shows up in how you face challenges. When a crisis hits, most people panic because they know they don't have what it takes to solve it. But those who lean on God's strength are able to stand still, breathe deeply, and confront the situation with courage that doesn't even make sense. It's not because they suddenly became more talented or smarter than others. It's because they are tapping into a strength that surpasses human logic. This is why people sometimes look at those walking with God and wonder, how are they still standing? How are they not crushed under the weight of this burden? The answer is simple. It is not their strength holding them up. It is His. They have surrendered their weakness to the one who transforms it into strength. Another way to understand strength beyond your own is to look at the difference between temporary victories and lasting triumph. Human strength may help you achieve a short-term win. You may get the promotion, overcome an obstacle, or push through a season of struggle. But lasting triumph, the kind that transforms your entire life, is only possible with God's strength. Human energy runs out the moment circumstances shift again, but divine strength anchors you regardless of the season. You don't just survive the battle, you grow stronger because of it. God's strength doesn't just get you through, it shapes you into someone who can handle even greater challenges in the future. It is not just about lifting the weight once. It is about becoming the kind of person who can carry new levels of responsibility, new levels of purpose, and new levels of blessing without being crushed. The beauty of strength beyond your own is that it humbles you. When you realize that your power is limited, but His is infinite, you stop boasting about what you can do and start marveling at what He can do through you. You no longer live with the pressure of proving yourself to the world because your confidence no longer comes from yourself. It comes from Him. This humility is not weakness. It is power under control. It allows you to live without the crushing weight of pride or the paralyzing fear of failure because your source is not tied to your fragile abilities. It frees you from comparison because you are not competing in human strength anymore. You are moving in divine strength, which cannot be measured against anyone else. And perhaps the most powerful aspect of strength beyond your own is that it shows up most vividly in your weakness. The world tells you to hide your weakness, to cover it up, to pretend like you are always strong and in control. But God tells you that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. That means the very areas where you feel most vulnerable are the exact places where His power shines brightest. When you admit that you cannot handle it on your own and surrender that weakness to Him, you create space for His supernatural strength to flow into your life. Instead of collapsing under the weight, you rise above it, not because you suddenly became stronger, but because He lifted you. This is the paradox of divine strength. It does not require you to be strong first. It only requires you to trust the one who is strong enough for both of you. There are seasons in life when the storm seems unending. The winds of uncertainty howl, the waves of disappointment crash, and the thunder of fear echoes through every corner of your mind. In those moments, most people believe peace is impossible. They assume peace only comes when the storm has passed, when the skies are clear, and when life finally settles into calm. But the truth is deeper, more powerful, and more life-changing than that. Real peace is not found after the storm. It is found right in the middle of it. Peace in the middle of the storm is not the absence of chaos around you. It is the presence of God within you. It is the unexplainable calm that defies logic, the stillness that carries you through when everything external screams for you to panic. It is the assurance that though the storm rages, you are not shaken, because your trust is anchored in the one who commands the wind and the waves. When Jesus was with His disciples on the boat and a violent storm arose, their reaction was just like ours often is. They panicked. They feared for their lives. They shouted, "Don't you care that we are perishing?" And in the middle of that chaos, Jesus was asleep. Imagine that. While the disciples trembled, Jesus rested. That picture alone reveals the kind of peace God offers his people. It is not naive ignorance of the storm. It is the confident knowledge that no storm is greater than his authority. When Jesus finally spoke, "Peace, be still," the winds ceased and the sea became calm. But here's the deeper truth. The same peace that silenced the storm outside is available to silence the storm inside of you. That is why peace in the middle of the storm is possible, because the one who holds authority over nature, life, and death also holds authority over your circumstances, your fears, and your future. The reason most people never experience this kind of peace is because they are looking for it in all the wrong places. Some try to find peace in money, believing that if their bank account is full, their soul will be calm. But financial security cannot stop anxiety from creeping into the heart. Others try to find peace in relationships, hoping that the presence of certain people will keep them safe. But people are fragile, and they too face storms of their own. Still others look for peace in success, in achievements, in recognition. But the moment life shifts, that peace evaporates. Real peace cannot be found in anything external, because external things are temporary and unstable. The only true source of unshakable peace is God himself, because he does not change, he does not fail, and he is not shaken when storms rise. When you rest in him, you tap into a peace that cannot be stolen, no matter what happens around you. Peace in the middle of the storm does not mean you stop feeling or stop caring. It doesn't mean you ignore reality or pretend like everything is perfect. It means that even while acknowledging the difficulty, you refuse to let fear dictate your response. It is the difference between drowning in panic and standing firmly in trust. Think of it like being in the eye of a hurricane. Around you, chaos swirls violently, but in the center, there is stillness. That is what peace in God feels like. It positions your heart in the center, anchored in his presence, while the chaos remains powerless to pull you under. You still see the storm, but it no longer controls your inner world. You still face problems, but they no longer determine your state of being. That kind of peace cannot be manufactured by human willpower. It is a supernatural gift given to those who rest in the presence of God. When peace fills your heart in the middle of chaos, everything about how you live begins to change. Your words become different. You no longer speak fear, you declare faith. Your decisions shift. You no longer move out of panic, but out of wisdom and patience. Your relationships strengthen because you are not transferring your anxiety to those around you. You are radiating calm. Peace is contagious, just as fear is. And when you carry God's peace within you, it begins to impact the atmosphere around you. People notice it. They ask how you can remain so steady. And in that moment, your life becomes a testimony to the reality of God's presence. Peace in the middle of the storm is not just for you. It is also for those watching you, those who need proof that faith works even when life gets hard. There is also a deep healing that comes with this peace. Stress, fear, and worry are not just emotional. They impact the body, the mind, and even the spirit. Anxiety drains energy, fear clouds judgment, and worry robs joy. But when peace takes root, healing begins. Your body begins to rest, your mind begins to think clearly, and your spirit begins to rise with renewed strength. Storms may still rage outside, but inside, you are whole. This is why the peace of God is described as surpassing all understanding. It doesn't always make sense, but it always transforms. People may not understand how you are able to smile through pain, how you are able to worship in loss, or how you are able to walk confidently when everything looks uncertain. Yet that is the beauty of divine peace. It is unexplainable, but undeniable. Peace in the middle of the storm also develops character. Every storm is a test, not just of your endurance, but of your faith. Will you trust God only when life is calm, or will you trust Him when the winds blow against you? It is easy to say you believe when everything goes your way, but real faith is proven when peace holds you steady in times of turmoil. Storms become classrooms where God teaches you how to rely on Him, how to grow stronger, and how to deepen your trust. And the more storms you walk through with peace, the more unshakable you become, because each experience reinforces that no matter what happens, you are safe in His hands. This is why some of the strongest people you will ever meet are those who have endured storms and discovered peace in the middle of them. They have learned that peace is not tied to circumstances. It is tied to the presence of God. And once you know that presence, no storm can ever truly shake you again. Everywhere you look, people are searching for power, not just political power or influence over others, but the inner power to keep going, to stay strong, to overcome obstacles, and to carry the weight of life without collapsing. Human beings are constantly plugging themselves into temporary power sources: money, career success, relationships, recognition, material possessions, even their own determination and willpower. And for a while, these things may give the illusion of strength. They may provide a temporary charge, a momentary sense of confidence, or a short-lived energy that pushes you forward. But eventually, every earthly power source fails. Money can vanish overnight. People can walk away or let you down. Careers can collapse. Health can weaken. Even willpower, as strong as it may seem, eventually burns out. That is why so many people live in cycles of exhaustion and disappointment, because they are plugging their lives into sources that cannot sustain them. But there is a power source that never fails, never weakens, never burns out, and never abandons those who rely on it. That source is God, the eternal, unshakable, limitless power that has no beginning and no end. And when you connect your life to Him, you tap into strength that can never be depleted. Think of a battery-powered device. It works well as long as the battery is charged, but once the energy runs out, it becomes useless no matter how well it was built. In the same way, people try to run their lives on limited batteries, on personal drive, ambition, talent, and resources. They may shine for a season, but eventually those batteries drain. But when you are connected to an infinite source of power, you never have to fear running out. God does not operate on limited supply. He does not give you just enough energy to survive the day and then leave you empty. His power is infinite, constantly flowing, and always available to those who seek Him. This means you can keep moving forward, keep standing tall, and keep facing life's storms, not because you are extraordinary, but because you are connected to the extraordinary. What makes God's power so unique is that it transcends every human limitation. Human strength is bound by time, age, health, and circumstances. A person can only push their body so far, only carry so much before they collapse. But divine power is not bound by these limits. It works when your body is weak, when your mind is tired, when your emotions are fragile, and when your resources are gone. In fact, it is often in your weakest moments that God's power shines the brightest, because it becomes undeniable that the strength you are standing in is not your own. This is why Scripture reminds us that His strength is made perfect in our weakness. Where we end, He begins, and His beginning has no end. To live in this truth is to walk with unshakable confidence, knowing that no matter what life takes from you, it can never take away the source who sustains you. When you are connected to a power source that never fails, your outlook on challenges changes completely. Most people dread obstacles because they know they don't have enough within themselves to face them. But when you live plugged into God's power, you see obstacles differently. You don't panic at the size of the mountain because you know the one who moves mountains is on your side. You don't collapse under the pressure because you know the one who holds the universe together is holding you. You don't crumble when people doubt you because you are no longer drawing from the fragile power of human approval. You are standing in the limitless energy of divine approval. Every time you face a challenge, instead of draining you, it becomes an opportunity for God's power to manifest in your life. This power source also sustains you through seasons of waiting. Waiting is one of the hardest things in life because it feels like wasted time, like standing still when everyone else is moving forward. Many people lose their strength in the waiting because their temporary sources of motivation run out. But when you are connected to God's never-failing power, waiting does not weaken you, it strengthens you. Just like a tree with deep roots can endure long droughts because it is tapped into underground water, you too can endure seasons of delay because your roots are connected to a source that never dries up. Others may look at you and wonder how you are still standing when you should have given up long ago, and the answer will always be the same. It is not you. It is the power of God flowing through you. There is also freedom in knowing that your source never fails. People who depend on temporary sources live in constant fear. Fear of losing their job, fear of losing their wealth, fear of losing relationships, fear of losing status. That fear eats away at peace and joy because they know deep down how fragile their source really is. But when God is your source, you live free from that fear. You are not afraid of lack because He is your provider. You are not afraid of abandonment because He is always present. You are not afraid of failure because His strength works even when you fall short. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes steady because you are rooted in a source that cannot be shaken. Another remarkable aspect of this never-failing power is that it is not limited by circumstances. Some power sources only work under certain conditions, like solar panels needing the sun or batteries needing recharging. But God's power works everywhere and in every situation. Whether you are on the mountaintop or in the valley, in the light of success or the shadow of failure, His power remains constant. It is the same power that created the universe, parted seas, healed the sick, and raised the dead. And it is not a distant power reserved for the pages of history. It is available to you right now, in your everyday struggles, in your private battles, in the quiet moments when you feel like quitting. All you need to do is stay connected, because the flow of His power is unending. The truth is, life without this power is exhausting. People burn out chasing goals, they break down under pressure, and they crumble when storms hit because their sources are insufficient. But when you live connected to the power source that never fails, you rise again and again, no matter how many times life tries to push you down. You wake up each day with renewed energy, not because circumstances are perfect, but because your source is perfect. You discover that your strength, your endurance, your joy, and your peace do not come from you at all. They come from the one whose power cannot fail. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that can grip the human heart. It paralyzes movement, clouds judgment, steals peace, and convinces people to shrink back instead of stepping forward. Fear whispers lies about failure, about inadequacy, about rejection, and about danger until the person listening becomes convinced that staying small, staying safe, and staying hidden is the only way to survive. The problem with fear is that it never truly goes away on its own. The longer you feed it, the stronger it becomes, and the more you obey it, the more it controls you. But there is something stronger than fear. Faith. Faith does not pretend fear does not exist, nor does it mean you never feel afraid again. Faith simply means choosing to trust God more than you trust your fears. It is the decision to act based on belief rather than retreat based on worry. Turning fear into faith is one of the greatest transformations a person can experience because it shifts you from living in limitation to living in freedom, from being controlled by uncertainty to being anchored in divine assurance. Fear shows up in countless ways. It appears when opportunities come and you hesitate because you fear failure. It rises when relationships begin to deepen, but you hold back because you fear being hurt. It surfaces when you have a dream burning inside of you, but you silence it because you fear what people will think if you try and don't succeed. Fear thrives on keeping you still, convincing you that staying in your comfort zone is safer than stepping into the unknown. Yet every meaningful achievement, every great act of courage, every breakthrough in life happens on the other side of fear. That is why faith is so vital. It moves you beyond the walls fear tries to build around you. Faith is not reckless, but it is bold. It doesn't wait for fear to vanish before moving. It acts in spite of fear, trusting that God is greater than whatever stands ahead. When you begin to turn fear into faith, one of the first shifts that happens is in your perspective. Fear focuses on the problem. It magnifies the worst-case scenarios and blinds you to possibility. Faith focuses on the promise. It sees beyond the problem to the God who is bigger than it. The spies who went into the promised land in the days of Moses illustrate this perfectly. Most of them came back terrified, saying the land was full of giants they could not defeat. Their fear exaggerated the challenge and erased their memory of God's power. But Joshua and Caleb returned with a different perspective. They saw the same giants, but through the lens of faith they declared, "We are well able to take the land." Fear said, "We can't." Faith said, "God can." And that is the heart of transformation, choosing to see the same reality but through the eyes of trust instead of the eyes of doubt. Another powerful aspect of turning fear into faith is that faith gives you movement. Fear freezes, faith flows. Fear keeps you stuck at the edge of the unknown, but faith pushes you to take the next step even when you don't see the full picture. Abraham left his homeland not knowing where he was going, but by faith he stepped forward because he trusted God's promise. Peter stepped out of the boat onto water, not because walking on water made sense, but because his faith in the one who called him was stronger than his fear of sinking. Every story of breakthrough in history is marked by that same moment of decision, when fear tried to paralyze, but faith compelled forward. If you wait for fear to disappear before you act, you will wait forever. But when you choose to act in faith, fear begins to shrink because it loses its power the moment you refuse to obey it. Turning fear into faith also requires learning to shift your inner dialogue. Fear speaks in the language of what if? What if I fail? What if I lose? What if they laugh? What if I am not enough? Faith speaks in the language of even if. Even if I face obstacles, God will sustain me. Even if others doubt me, I will still trust the vision God placed inside me. Even if the path is difficult, I will walk it knowing I am not alone. This shift in language changes everything, because the words you speak shape the reality you live in. The more you feed yourself words of faith, the weaker the voice of fear becomes. Faith doesn't ignore the what-ifs, but it answers them with confidence in God's sovereignty. Fear asks questions to stop you. Faith asks questions to grow you. One of the most liberating truths about faith is that it doesn't require you to have everything figured out. Fear convinces you that unless you know every detail, you cannot move forward. Faith tells you that you don't need to know the how when you trust the one who holds the how in his hands. This is where surrender becomes the fuel of faith. When you stop relying on your limited knowledge and release control to God, faith rises naturally because your confidence no longer depends on your ability, it depends on His. Fear wants you to carry the full weight of uncertainty alone, but faith invites you to rest in the fact that God already sees the outcome and has prepared a way through. Another dimension of turning fear into faith is learning from past victories. Fear thrives on memory. It constantly replays your past failures and disappointments to convince you that the future will be the same. Faith, however, thrives on testimony. It remembers the times God carried you before, the storms He brought you through, the doors He opened, and the strength He gave when you had none left. When David faced Goliath, he didn't focus on the giant's size. He remembered how God delivered him from the lion and the bear. That memory built his faith for the present battle. In the same way, when you face fear, recall the moments God has already proven Himself faithful. Let those memories fuel your faith, because if He did it then, He can do it again. Ultimately, the transformation of fear into faith is about where you place your trust. Fear places trust in the danger, in the problem, in the possibility of defeat. Faith places trust in God, who is greater than all of it. It does not deny the presence of giants, but it declares the presence of God as stronger. It does not ignore the waves, but it knows the one who walks on them. It does not minimize the pain of uncertainty, but it magnifies the power of the one who can turn uncertainty into opportunity. And every time you choose faith over fear, you grow stronger, more courageous, and more aligned with the life God designed for you to live. Victory is a word everyone desires, yet many misunderstand what it truly means or how it is achieved. Some believe victory comes solely through strength, strategy, or relentless effort. Others believe it comes through wealth, connections, or influence. While these may create moments of success, true victory, lasting, unshakable, transformative victory, does not come from human effort alone. True victory is born out of trust, and not just any trust, but trust placed in God. When you place your confidence in Him, when you rely on His wisdom above your own understanding, when you surrender control and choose to lean on His strength instead of your own, you discover a kind of victory that no enemy, no obstacle, no storm, and no setback can take away. Victory through trust is not about fighting harder. It is about resting deeper in the certainty that God is faithful and that His plans will always prevail. Trust is not always easy, especially when life feels uncertain or overwhelming. The human instinct is to hold on tightly, to control every outcome, to depend on logic and human calculation. We want guarantees before we step forward. We want proof before we believe. But trust requires letting go of that need for control and leaning on the one whose knowledge far exceeds our own. It means believing that even when you cannot see the whole picture, God sees it clearly. It means accepting that your path may not look like what you expected, but it is still leading you exactly where you are meant to be. This is why trust is the key to victory, because the moment you stop clinging to your own limited vision and start resting in God's unlimited wisdom, you position yourself to win battles you could never win on your own. Consider how many times in life we try to fight battles with sheer willpower. We work harder, we stress more, we plan obsessively, and when things still don't go our way, we end up exhausted, discouraged, and defeated. That is because we are trying to achieve victory in our own strength, forgetting that true strength comes from God. Trust is what shifts the weight from your shoulders onto His. When you trust Him, you stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight in the first place. You recognize that some victories are not about swinging harder, but about surrendering sooner, laying your fears, your plans, and your struggles at His feet, and letting Him move on your behalf. The irony of trust is that while the world sees it as weakness, it is actually the greatest strength, because it aligns you with divine power that cannot lose. Victory through trust also teaches patience. Many people miss their breakthrough not because they lacked faith, but because they lacked patience. They trusted God for a moment, but when things didn't happen on their timeline, they panicked and took matters back into their own hands. True trust means waiting with confidence, knowing that God's timing is perfect even when it feels delayed. It means resisting the urge to settle for less than His best, just to ease your discomfort in the waiting. Victory is not always instant. It is often a process, and trust is what allows you to endure that process without giving up. Every delay, every detour, every closed door becomes part of the path to a greater victory, if only you trust enough to keep walking. One of the clearest examples of victory through trust comes from the story of Jericho. God told the Israelites to march around the city walls for 7 days without lifting a single weapon. From a human perspective, that instruction made no sense. How could walking in circles lead to victory over a fortified city? But the Israelites obeyed, they trusted, and on the 7th day, the walls came down by the power of God, not by the might of man. That is the essence of victory through trust. It doesn't always look logical, but it always produces results beyond what human effort could achieve. Trust is not passive. It is active obedience to God's instruction, even when it doesn't make sense. And when you move in that kind of trust, you experience victories that are undeniably divine. Trust also transforms how you view failure. Without trust, failure looks final. It feels like defeat. But with trust, failure becomes a stepping stone, a lesson, and a setup for a greater comeback. You no longer see closed doors as rejection, but as redirection. You no longer view delays as punishment, but as preparation. Trust gives you the courage to keep moving forward even when the path doesn't look promising, because you know the one guiding your steps cannot lead you wrong. This shift in perspective is itself a form of victory, because it keeps you from being crushed by circumstances and allows you to keep walking in hope. The deeper you grow in trust, the more fearless you become. Trust removes the need to manipulate, to prove yourself, or to control outcomes. It allows you to stand still in the middle of storms, confident that God will see you through. And this fearlessness is itself a victory, because fear is one of the greatest weapons the enemy uses to stop progress. When you trust, fear loses its grip. When you trust, doubt loses its voice. When you trust, you move forward with boldness, not because you know the future, but because you know the one who holds it. That kind of confidence cannot be shaken, because it is not rooted in your ability. It is rooted in his faithfulness. Victory through trust is not about escaping battles, but about entering them with the assurance that you are not alone. It is about walking into uncertain places with a certain God. It is about surrendering your weaknesses and watching them become the very platform where his strength is displayed. Every testimony of victory in Scripture and in life is marked by that one common thread: trust. Those who trusted saw walls fall, seas part, enemies scatter, and lives transformed. And that same victory is available to anyone who dares to let go of their limited control and place full confidence in the one who has never failed. Living boldly with confidence is not about arrogance, pride, or pretending to be something you are not. It is about walking through life with a steady assurance that who you are and what you carry comes from a source greater than yourself. It is about embracing your identity, standing firm in your purpose, and refusing to shrink back in the face of fear, doubt, or opposition. Confidence in the world often comes and goes because it is built on fragile foundations like appearance, possessions, approval, or temporary success. But true confidence, the kind that allows you to live boldly no matter what season you are in, is rooted in God. When you know that the Creator of the universe is with you, guiding you, strengthening you, and equipping you, you stop second-guessing yourself and start moving forward with clarity and power. Boldness flows not from ego, but from assurance, and that assurance comes from knowing that your life has divine backing. Too many people live small because they allow fear and insecurity to dictate their steps. They dim their light so others will not feel uncomfortable. They silence their voice to avoid criticism. They bury their dreams because they worry about failure or rejection. But when you live boldly with confidence, you stop apologizing for being who God made you to be. You stop shrinking in spaces where you were meant to stand tall. You stop hiding your gifts and talents as if they are accidents, and you begin to recognize them as intentional deposits from God to impact the world. Confidence is not about thinking you are better than others. It is about understanding that you were created on purpose, with purpose, and for purpose. Bold living is simply a refusal to live beneath that calling. One of the greatest challenges to boldness is the fear of what people think. Opinions, judgments, and criticisms can become prisons if you let them. The desire for approval keeps many from ever stepping fully into their potential. But when your confidence is rooted in God, you realize that the approval of people is fleeting and unnecessary. If He has called you, equipped you, and placed something within you, then no human opinion has the authority to cancel that. Living boldly means choosing obedience to God over the applause of people. It means speaking the truth even if your voice trembles, pursuing your vision even if others doubt, and standing firm even if you must stand alone. This kind of boldness intimidates insecurity, but inspires greatness, because it proves that courage is not about having no fear, but about refusing to let fear win. Bold confidence also changes how you approach opportunities. Instead of shrinking back with hesitation, you step forward with expectation. You stop asking, "What if I'm not enough?" and start declaring, "If God is with me, I am more than enough." You stop disqualifying yourself before the race begins and start recognizing that every open door is an invitation to trust God's provision. Living boldly doesn't mean every step is easy or that every attempt will succeed, but it means you no longer let the possibility of failure stop you from trying. Confidence empowers you to take risks, to learn from mistakes, and to grow stronger with each attempt. It fuels resilience because even when you stumble, you rise with the assurance that the one who called you will not abandon you. Another aspect of living boldly with confidence is that it liberates others. When you stand tall, you give permission for others to do the same. Boldness is contagious, just like fear is. Your confidence can inspire someone else to finally take their step, to finally speak their truth, to finally pursue their dream. Living small does not serve the world. It only reinforces cycles of fear and limitation. But when you walk boldly in your assignment, you create a ripple effect that empowers others to rise as well. Your confidence becomes a testimony that God can use ordinary people in extraordinary ways. It proves that you do not need perfection to make an impact. You only need courage and trust. Living boldly also reshapes your relationship with challenges. Boldness does not eliminate adversity, but it changes how you face it. Instead of shrinking back when problems arise, you confront them head-on with faith. Confidence declares that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Confidence reminds you that you are more than a conqueror through Christ. Confidence refuses to let setbacks define you because it knows that every trial carries the potential for growth. When you live boldly, you stop seeing obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as stepping stones to greater strength and influence. Each battle you overcome adds to the foundation of your confidence, making you even more unshakable for the next season. Confidence also unlocks creativity and vision. Fear stifles imagination, but boldness gives it room to breathe. When you are not constantly worried about failure or judgment, your mind is free to dream bigger, innovate, and pursue new possibilities. You begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles. You take ideas seriously instead of dismissing them out of insecurity. You create, build, and lead not from a place of desperation, but from a place of conviction. Living boldly means living expansively, refusing to be boxed in by limitations or confined by doubt. It is about stepping into the full measure of what God has entrusted to you and allowing that expression to bless the world. At the heart of bold confidence is trust. Trust that God does not make mistakes. Trust that He equips those He calls. Trust that even if you fall, His hand will lift you. When you live with this kind of trust, boldness becomes your natural response. You no longer tiptoe through life hoping not to be noticed. You walk with presence, purpose, and conviction, knowing that every step you take is ordered. And while others may wonder how you find the courage to live so freely, you know the truth. Confidence is not about who you are alone, but about who walks with you. And because He never leaves you, you can live each day boldly, shining without apology, stepping into opportunities without fear, and embracing life with unshakable assurance.